profile is made possible by grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the Texas Committee for the Humanities.
It always is crazy for survivors to talk about surviving. There's something almost callous about it. I don't think success ever gave me as much pleasure as it gave most people. I'm not 100% and I'm very sad about that. I understand Hammett to this day. Very sad. He was a very complicated. I did finally take the Fifth Amendment. I tried not to take the Fifth Amendment. The House Un-American What I said was, I would talk about myself. There was no. My mother and I, I'm sorry to say, didn't get along. Annoyed me. I had stopped writing, and by the time I realized I was not going to be any good, and I wasn't going to be bad. I've long ago stopped thinking about what happiness is, taken for granted that there was no arbitrary definition of it.
You wrote that you needed a teacher, a cool teacher who would not be impressed or disturbed by a strange and difficult girl. And you were to meet him, but not for another 4 or 5 years, and this was Hammett,
yes,
your teacher. Was there something of the Pygmalion in your relationship with Hammett?
Yes, I think so, particularly for me as a writer. Not for me as so much as a person. I think I said what I meant in the piece on Hammett that I did. He certainly had something to do with my development as a person, but I really meant as a writer.
He really tore down some of the things you wrote, and you said the criticism hurt enormously.
Oh, yes, indeed, and tore them to pieces.
Actually, literally, as a matter of fact.
More important than tore them to pieces. I'm not at all sure that I would have written without Hammett, because I had written. And by the time I met Hammett, I had stopped writing. I decided I was not going to be any good, and that I wasn't going to be bad. It was he who teased me back into writing, annoyed me back into writing, baited me back into writing. And then watched for as long as he lived.
You've written that The Little Foxes was the play that was most dependent on Hammett.
I had done the 9th draft of Little Foxes, and I finished it and left it in a briefcase in front of his door, and went to bed at about 6 o'clock in the morning and got up about 6 o'clock at night. And he said, well, you're on your way. Now start all over again. I never hated anybody so much in my whole life as I did that night.
Well, you know, much is said in relationships between men and women who write or do some kind of creative work, that it must be very difficult to take criticism, or that a relationship must be very strong to withstand criticism. Did you feel that, or did you feel it was such a natural part of your life?
No, I felt various things, sometimes furious. And often I hated him for what he said. But I'd quiet myself in a day or two and realize that it took bravery and great affection to chance saying such things. That he was chancing the whole relationship on the fact that he wanted me to be some good. And that I wouldn't have such courage with anybody. And he didn't think of it as courage, he just thought of it as telling the truth, and that he hoped I was good enough to fix things.
Looking back, what do you think motivated him? To see you fulfill your potential, to make you...
He was very good to writers. I was not the only writer he helped. He was a very generous man to writers. I had lunch the other day with a woman he helped write her first book. She doesn't write very much anymore, but she wrote 2 or 3 books. He was very good to writers, and in my case there was a great deal at stake, a great deal of feeling at stake. I think he really wanted me to be some good. He was very pleased and proud when he thought I was.
In Days to Come, your character, who you call Julie, says, "I always wanted someone to show me the way. And I decided a long time ago there were people who had to learn from other people, and I'm one of them." Is there some of you in Julie?
Yeah, yes, indeed.
And is there some of Hammett and Leo Whalen?
I suppose so. I suppose there's some of Hammett in almost every character I ever wrote.
Some in Kurt Miller?
I suppose in every character. Who was it? Somebody said, I think it was, I don't remember, I'm losing my mind. I think it was Tolstoy said everybody writes the same person over again in the same book. I suppose in everything I've written, Hammett has been somewhere. Some form of him,
You know, Dashiell Hammett has become a legend, and I think partly through your own memoirs. What kind of man was Dashiell Hammett? Tell us about him a little bit.
I don't know that I can explain why he was extraordinary. He was a very good writer, for one thing, I think. And while he was not of the very top level, he changed the face of much of American fiction, I think. He was a very important influence on American fiction. Very important. He was a very remarkable looking man, which in his case, I think, honestly had something to do with the whole thing, as it does with most people's lives, of course. He was an extraordinarily tall and extraordinarily thin, and very distinguished looking.
And very handsome, in a word.
Yes, I was avoiding the word handsome. I don't know why I was avoiding it, but he was
Why do you avoid it? You've always said that intellectuals are the best-looking men you've ever known. And he was an intellectual in his way?
Yes. I don't know why I avoided it. It sounds like an actor to me. You say actors are handsome. There was some self-discipline in the end that was beyond belief that I've never seen in anybody else. The fact that a man at that age enlists in an army and goes to the Aleutians for 4 years and is able to stand up to that climate and take that kind of beating and be cheerful about it and love it. Love the Aleutians.
How did you take it?
Oh, I spent the whole 4 years worried to death he was going to die of pneumonia. He'd had tuberculosis from the First World War. But he didn't. Came out okay. Came out looking awful, but okay.
You depict him as being one of the most self-contained people I've ever read about.
He was. Not, mind you, in the drinking years. Although they would often have long sober periods, he would often go on the wagon for 6 months at a time. He was almost totally self-contained.
You wrote that you were a pretty good drinker yourself.
Mm.
How did you decide to give it up? Why did you?
I didn't like it. I mean, I didn't like being, and I saw it coming, and I didn't like myself. I went to an analyst at what should have been the best time of my life, which was the week after Little Foxes opened. And I was blind drunk during the whole experience. And about a week later, I thought, there's something the matter with this lady. Something's very wrong with a woman with the biggest hit on Broadway and this miserable and this drunk. And I better go do something about it.
Were you running away from success?
I don't know what I was running away from. I suppose so. I don't think I ever... I certainly wanted success. I don't think I ever... And I don't say this proudly because I think there's something very unpleasant about it. I don't think success ever gave me as much pleasure as it gave most people. And I'm very sad about that. Very sad about it, because it should give people pleasure.
Do you think success came too early with the Children's Hour? Was it a letdown?
No, didn't come that early. Well, I was 27, and well, it's not late, but...
You were a big success, though, for...
Yes, it was.
And everything that I've seen written about you said that you were a big success at a very young age, so let's call 27 very young.
Yes. I don't know. I don't know what happened to me. I mean, I was certainly drinking very heavily. But then everybody around me drank very heavily.
Analysis doesn't always help drinking. In fact,
No, it
often
doesn't.
does not.
It did in my case. Because one day the analyst said, you will either stop drinking or not come back here on Monday morning. I can't analyze you this way. You're an alcoholic. And I said, oh, no, I'm not an alcoholic. He said, yes, you are. In my definition, you are. And I can't go on this way. You'll just be taking your money and wasting my time. I thought it over the weekend and thought, okay, I'll try. And I didn't have anything to drink for about 6 years. It wasn't bad after the first few months.
That's extraordinary to be able to just say, I won't do it.
No, it was hard. It was hard the first... It was hard for a while, but then it stopped being hard.
And then did you feel better without it?
Well, I went back to mild drinking, which is what I do now, you know. Drink or two before dinner and some wine or something. I never wanted to be drunk again. Well, I did once. Actually, about 4 or 5 years ago. I was up in the vineyard, and I'd stayed very late. It was in November, cold November night. I was by myself. And I thought, I haven't been drunk since so many years. I think I'll just get very drunk tonight, all by myself. So I got very drunk. And there's a stair landing up to my bedroom. And I got a large stair landing. I got to the stair landing, and I thought, you're never going to make the next steps. And why should you? You're used to sleep any place you wanted. Why don't you sleep on the landing? So I fell asleep on the landing very happily, very pleased with myself. I was young enough to just go to sleep on a stair landing again. And I woke up with a terrible cold and the worst backache and my legs in some dreadful cramped position. Went to bed for 2.5 days and thought, that's the end of that. I'll never do this again. Age has descended.
You speak of Hammett still interfering with you and still dictating the rules after his death.
Very often does. Very often does, and I often get very annoyed. Sometimes I break out laughing.
How do you mean?
I'll find myself doing something and hearing a voice behind me tell me what to do, or make fun of me, or tease me, and I'll get very angry about it. And actually have conversations with it. And then I'll, of course, laugh at the idea.
Do you sometimes measure what you do against what he would have thought about it?
Sometimes. Sometimes I can't afford to.
He would disapprove?
I know so well he would disapprove, including possibly talking about him now.
You've written about your life with Hammett that it had settled into a passionate affection that was so unexpected to both of us that we were as shy and careful with each other as courting children. That's a lovely picture you draw.
Yes, we had. Once the so-called affair was over,
What do you mean the affair was over?
well, once the so-called physicality was gone. What a word. I'm just being nice for television. I don't recommend it go between men and women. I sound as if I am recommending it. But once the worry about it and the feelings about it were beginning to disappear, usually people break up, I think. We had almost the opposite experience, in part because he had stopped drinking. It wasn't only a question of a man and a woman who'd known each other a long time. He was now no longer drinking. He was totally on the wagon. Then it's a very hard relationship to explain, Miss Berger, because it sounds as if, when I write or when I talk about it, as if this was a totally steady relationship between a man and a woman who lived in the same house for many, many years. This was not the truth. I traveled a great deal. We almost always had different apartments.
Was that for convention or because
in
it
part,
was better?
It started out as because I thought I didn't want to shock my mother and father. Turned out my father not only wasn't shocked, but was devoted to Hammett. My mother wasn't, but my father was. But I think we both did it because we really rather liked it. This didn't stop our living in the same house together. It just meant that every once in a while he'd go to his apartment, and we lived on the farm together, but once in a while if he didn't like my visitors, which was sometimes more than once in a while, he'd just go back to New York for 2 or 3 days and then come on back again. The last 5 years of his life, we lived totally together when he was very, very ill. And we lived totally in the same house.
I think one of my favorite lines in literature, though, is what you said finally in that paragraph, which was, we knew we had survived for the best of all reasons, the pleasure of each other.
Yes, we had great pleasure in each other. We had enormous pleasure in each other. I think more than, I'm no judge of other people's pleasure, but we had fun together. We had more fun than we had quiet fun. We amused each other and puzzled each other, I think, till the very end of his life.
Would you say you were dependent upon him?
Oh, very dependent upon him, very dependent.
Do you think Hammett was dependent on you, finally, in the long run? I don't mean
I
when
used
he
to
was
say
so
that
sick.
he wasn't, and he used to say he was.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, to this minute, couldn't tell you whether he was or not. He was in the sick years, of course, but that was...
No, I don't mean that. I meant otherwise.
He used to say he was. I never saw any signs of dependence. I'm not 100% sure that I understand Hammett to this day. I'm not willing to take my word for all that I saw. He was a very complicated man. And it's perfectly possible that he was very dependent upon me, but equally capable of walking out at any minute of the day or night and not returning.
Is that necessarily an either-or proposition?
No, it
Couldn't
isn't.
It be both?
It isn't, but I didn't know that.
Ah.
It certainly isn't. It's one of the things I have learned. You're wiser at your age than I was at your age.
There are different kinds of dependence, and of course what you were talking about in your dependence upon Hammett was an emotional dependence, a loving dependence, as opposed to an economic or financial dependence.
No, I was dependent, forgive me. When I first met Hammett, it was 5 years before I couldn't get a job. I had worked, but it was it was still, the depression was ending, but I couldn't get a job. I was very dependent on him for 5 years. He supported me for 5 years. And I certainly felt nothing about that.
You didn't. It was
Nothing
not
at all.
uncomfortable.
Nothing at all.
Well, he was a very open person, though.
Very open.
He never used that dependence, is,
Oh,
I
no,
think what
no,
you're saying.
never. I mean, it never was even discussed. Never was talked about. We didn't live the way most people lived. I mean, there weren't bank accounts and things. There was money on a table, and I took what I needed. Later on, when it was sort of a comedy of politesse that we played. Later on, as I said, when he came out of jail and the Internal Revenue Department took away everything he ever earned, he never earned another nickel after he came out of jail. I, in turn, would put money in a safe, and he would open the safe to take out what he needed. I never knew what he took or didn't take, which is almost going overboard in the in the polished situation of money.
Do you know, I sometimes think you still believe that he needed you less than you needed him.
Yes, I think perhaps he sold me a bill of goods. And very wise of him, too.
Why?
Well, I'm not sure it's perhaps wise to let people know how much you need them.
Isn't that honest, though?
Yes, it is, but it's also dangerous. They could take advantage of it all, and most of them do.
Would he have?
No, I think he was frightened I would.
Would you have?
I might have in certain ways. I might have. I wouldn't be too sure.
Is this what you mean by the games men and women play with each other?
Yes, in large measure. I'm not sure that... I wouldn't be too sure of... I don't think I'd have meanly done it or taken anything away from him, but I wouldn't trust myself with too much knowledge of how people needed me.
I think you're a person who sought limits. You wanted someone to limit you in some way. You were a spoiled only child.
Yes, that's right. I did seek the limits. That's right, I did. I wanted somebody to say, "Nix, knock it off."
You thought of marrying at one time, and then you decided not to, and at one point you thought of marrying another man.
Yes, yes.
You were in love with Hammett, and yet you thought of marrying someone else. Why was that? Was that the safer way?
Well, Hammett was, as I told you before, in his drinking days, not the easiest man to be attached to. And there certainly was a period when I believed that. But I don't remember any great social discomfort. Maybe there was, and I don't remember. I'm not very conscious of people socially frowning at me. Not conscious enough, I think, half the time.
You once told a story that when he was very sick at the end and was about to go to the hospital, and you were going with him, he seemed surprised that you were going.
Yes.
Tell me that story. What happened
I
that
find
day?
that, I'll tell it to you, I find it a painful story because I don't like him for it. It was the last time he went to the hospital. And as I said in the piece that I've just written about it, I didn't want him to go. And I lost my nerve. And the ambulance came for him. We lived in a house that I owned with a tiny elevator. And the stretcher was barely able to get in the elevator. So I had put on my hat and coat and watched the stretcher get in and said, "I'll meet you downstairs from the ambulance." And he looked up from the stretcher and said, "Oh, are you coming? How nice." And I thought, if you were well, I think I'd put a knife in you. Here, for all these years, I haven't moved. And it's a terrible, terrible remark you just made. Insulting past belief. And I went down the stairs, almost unable to get in the ambulance. I've only lately begun to forgive him for the remark because I've begun to realize that it was very typical and very much his way of saying, nobody really need to do anything for me. And I won't blame you if you don't want to come to a nasty old hospital. There'll be no blame for you. Why should you come?
Did it make you think he didn't understand what you had between you?
Beg pardon?
Did it make you think he didn't understand what you had between you?
No. It just made me angry. Just made me terribly, terribly angry. It still does, as you can probably hear in my voice a little bit. But the pride in it is so... I have great respect for pride, but the pride in it there is overbearing and unpleasant, I think.
You're pretty proud yourself.
Yes, I am, and I can also be overbearing and unpleasant.
But you say you laugh sometimes when you are too insistent on doing things by yourself.
Yes. Yes. Oh, yes, I understand why I did it. I understand it because of my own nature. That doesn't make it any pleasanter.
You said Hammett was generous with writers and, of course, with you. His career as a writer was ending as yours began. Did that cause discomfort in your relationship?
No. No. Because I didn't know it was ending in the first place, and neither did he. And then there was never any question that his career was none of my business. He made it quite clear that it was none of my business. It was none of anybody's business. He certainly never knew it was at an end. As a matter of fact, the last days of his life, an unfinished novel was on his bed. Dash had a mistaken belief that there was plenty of time for everything. And of course there wasn't.
In our next profile, Lillian Hellman talks about the McCarthy years and her appearance before the House Un-American Activities Committee.
Profile was made possible by grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the Texas Committee for the Humanities.